There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is your mountain. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Your Mountain podcast. I'm your host, David Wilms. I've got Nephi Cole sitting shoulder to shoulder with me here. He's pounding a Monster Energy drink,
it's
probably
delicious.
His fourth one of the day, and we're at noon. How close am I?
Too close. Too close. Yeah.
I hope. Who's the parent company of Monster? Are they their own independent company?
You know, do you really want the backstory? Because I'll give it to you.
I don't want much backstory. I just want to know if you own stock, if this is a publicly traded company, because I think
I'm pretty sure it's Coca-Cola now.
Is it Coca-Cola that owns them?
Well, it used to be Hanson's, like those people, you know, they used to make like they used to make drink, like fruit juice stuff. Then they figured out there's no money in fruit juice. And so then they made Monster Energy and then somebody bought it. But let's just call it Monster. You know you know who's sponsored by Monster now?
Not us.
Tiger Woods.
Is Tiger?
Tiger Woods. Yeah. Me and Tiger Woods. We have a lot lot in common, but not.
How much in common? How deep do we want to go here?
Basically nothing.
you know, besides
we both drink Monster Energy drinks.
Okay.
At least I'm assuming he drinks them.
Yeah, because he's sponsored by them.
Yeah, but he might not be.
Yeah, who knows? Anyway, welcome. I'm looking at an empty chair across from us. Mike McGrady's going to walk in here in a stealth-like manner in the next 10, 15 minutes.
He should be more committed.
I think so, too. He spends way too much time with the job that actually pays his bills. Yeah, right. Yeah. Anyway, so he'll be here, right? So we're joined today, and we're, I should say, joined today remotely, right? I probably shouldn't have said that because we tried to make through this whole thing and nobody would know if we're doing this over the phone or not, right? Yeah. But no, we're joined today remotely by Jake McGuigan from the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Welcome.
Good afternoon. How you doing today?
Hey, we're doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. And now you say remotely. I hope your listeners will accept me. I'm over in the People's Republic of Massachusetts, so that's pretty remote for a lot of your listeners out there in God's country.
Yeah, you're my son's favorite person now.
Why is that? Because Tom Brady's nearby?
That's right. Because my son Griffin, for some reason, we can't figure out as diehard Broncos fan, you know, and family, like this kid for some reason loves the Patriots. So,
nice. Well, he's a smart one then. He's a smart one in the family.
Yeah, but can you really be the Patriots if you're in Massachusetts, Jake? I mean, can you? Get out there
anymore.
I joke with people that the only firearms that'll be allowed in Massachusetts will be the muskets in the end zone that the Patriots dress up as you get to use after a touchdown. Those are the only guns we'll have left at this rate.
Well, thank you for working out there. I'm sure it's not easy. I've actually been out there and visited before, and man, is it a different world. And it like, I don't know, what do you say? It is a different world. And that's one of the things that makes working policy issues nationally such a challenge, because you do have all these different areas.
Is it a challenge, Nephi?
It's
a challenging issue.
Yeah. How many times do I get to use that word during the same podcast?
I don't know, but I'm going to call you out. I'm going to start keeping a tally mark, and I'll let you know at the end of this episode how many times you've called something a challenging issue.
Okay, just don't interrupt my train of thought.
All right. Kick it back. Sorry to interrupt you.
I don't remember anymore, counselor.
Oh, you
interrupted my train of thought.
Well, if you were a good attorney, you'd be able to pick right back up where you left off.
Well, because I'm not an attorney, I'll do it anyway. So yeah, we're talking about the East Coast and how, challenging it is, some of the issues that we have from, your side of the country, our side of the country. So Jake, with National Shooting Sports Foundation, what's your title? Tell us about National Shooting Sports Foundation and what you do.
Yeah, so that's a perfect lead-in for really what I do in overseeing the United States. So for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, I am the managing director of state affairs. So what that really encompasses is overseeing the policy for the firearms industry on the state level. So we have lobbyists, if you will, in many of the states across the country. As you can imagine, they would be in many of the hot button issue states, many of the Northeast and on the West Coast as well. but we also have that work directly for NSSF. We have employees based down in the Southeast, the West region, as well as in the Rocky Mountain region. So we do have representation basically across the country. As you mentioned, the policies differ greatly. The stuff we have to deal with in the Southeast is drastically different than what we have to deal with in the Northeast. I would say that in the Northeast, we are, playing more of a defensive game, while in the Southeast, we can go on offense and do some proactive things for the industry. And just a little background on the National Shooting Sports Foundation. We are the trade association of the firearms industry. So we represent manufacturers, we represent retailers, we represent ranges. So we represent anything from the big box retailers down to the small independent mom and pop shops, that really are the lifeblood of our industry. So you could imagine looking at issues that could impact either manufacturers or the independent retailer. So, we're dealing with issues across the country, whether it's, universal background checks, which obviously will impact retailers and their ability to do business. But at the same time, there are some states where they have certain restrictions or it's codified in state law where, maybe a certain shotgun is not allowed to be sold. So we work to try to fix that so our manufacturers are allowed to sell in those states as well. And then obviously the large, high priority bills that you always hear about, assault weapons bans, bans on standard capacity magazines. Those are the things that we see in the Northeast that we're continuing to battle. And then, that's also happening on the West Coast as well, as people leave California and try to inhabit other areas or other states. They escape California, yet still seem to want to vote the same way when they get to those other states. So we're seeing a California creep into places like Oregon and Nevada, where they used to be very pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment, and we're seeing changes to those states because these people who are escaping what they don't like in California, yet still voting the same way when they get to those other states. So that's just kind of a high overview of what we do on the state level for NSSF, representing manufacturers and retailers across the country and really the various other issues that pop up.
Let me ask you a quick question about that, because one thing I've heard people compare NSSF mistakenly to the NRA, and I want you to, if you could take just a minute and kind of explain the difference between your organizations so there's no confusion there.
Yeah, I appreciate that question because there is some confusion when it comes down to that. So what I usually tell people is the NRA is representing yourself, your individual right, your individual Second Amendment rights. The National Shooting Sports Foundation is representing essentially the business side of things. We obviously focus a lot on jobs, the economic impact of the industry on certain states and certain districts. So if you look at it, if when a customer walks into a gun shop, a firearms retailer, everything behind that counter we represent. Obviously, that customer that walked into the door, the NRA represents that customer. Obviously, you see many media accounts kind of blur the lines and say that the NRA is the in the firearms industry lobbying wing, which essentially, obviously, there is some overlap, but NSSF is the trade association for the firearms industry. So that's really where you kind of, draw that distinction. We represent the business side of things.
So, you guys run, one of the biggest shows of its kind in the world. SHOT Show belongs to NSSF.
Yes, it does. And it's an amazing event every year in January in Las Vegas. Just had it obviously 4 or 5 months ago. Another great SHOT Show. And, I've been with NSSF this July, coming up on my 12th year, and I've been through, I guess, this 12 SHOT Shows as of now. So it's been a it's been just to see the progression of SHOT Show, right? I mean, my first year or two, it was a bit of a different makeup. You had more of a hunting, more of a kind of an outdoor feel. But as SHOT Show has evolved and progressed, we've had a lot of interactions with law enforcement, with the law enforcement segment of SHOT Show. You see a lot more within the kind of what you would call a tactical section developing, and basically the growth and expansion of SHOT Show. And, we talk about manufacturers, but, our industry is made up of a lot of smaller independent manufacturers. In essence, our industry really only has 3 publicly traded companies. The rest really are privately owned, smaller independent companies that are really creating the products, doing the research and development, and bringing new items to market. And that's really what SHOT Show is. SHOT Show is the opportunity for everyone to go see the new products that are going to be rolling out in that calendar year and really start placing orders for those new products.
I've been there 4 times. Does it still feel like Disneyland to you, Jake? Because I started talking about SHOT Show and I just I've got this giant grin. Dave's looking at me. I got a giant grin. I love it.
I'm just mad.
I love it.
I'm just mad hearing all this talk about it, and I haven't been. And I remember you going with the governor, Nephi.
Oh yeah.
And somehow, I know you were the gun guy for the governor, but somehow I couldn't get an invitation there. And then now it's like, how do I get credentialed to get?
It's industry
to get in
only,
the door,
right? So SHOT Show, you can't go unless you're industry, and then the expectation there is that it's people that buy things, and that's not you.
Wow, that was he shut you down pretty quick on that. He was
except I just bought a new used pistol
from
you.
Well, that's not helping the industry. No one produced a new firearm. You just bought it from him.
No, it helps the industry because then Nephi goes out and buys a new firearm.
Buy another one.
Yeah. So I have a new plug for Sig Sauer P320 VTAC. My guy Kyle Lamb, who makes the best designs the best firearms in the world. But anyway, it's just that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the industry, big fan of everything.
If I commit to buy something, can somebody tell me how to get in the door? I'll commit.
Well, let me explain. Listen, if you show up with the shirt that Nephi was sporting on his little adventure there when he was with the governor's office, maybe we'd let you in.
You gotta look like a rodeo cowboy.
There was no mistaking where this group was coming from.
Yeah,
no, I remember those shirts.
Yeah. You better not make fun of them.
They were. I'm not making fun of them. I can't.
You know who paid for those. His last name is Mead.
I know who paid for them. The same guy that signed my paycheck. So.
And you know what? Yeah. They had the impact because I'm talking about it today, and everyone on the floor was like, "Whoa, who's coming in with these guys? What is this? Who are these guys?"
I'll tell you who is Weatherby's coming in with these guys. That's who. They moved to Wyoming shortly after that, and I think that the discussion and the decision was made shortly after those visits. But I mean, it is great, and like you the entire team at NSSF, they really, for years, have knocked it out of the park with that event. It's really a spectacular event. But you guys do a lot more than that.
And like you were talking about, I mean, we've seen it grow. I mean, we've had complaints when we moved into that Sands Convention Center the first year, but iron out the kinks and really get it to such a well-oiled machine now that there are very, very few complaints with how we run this show, and we continue to hopefully be able to do that here in the future.
It'll be one of the largest trade shows in Las Vegas. Am I not correct in saying that next year?
Yes. So square footage wise, it's usually around the top 3 or 4. Obviously, it changes based on that. Now, obviously, attendees, it doesn't really fall into that. But I mean, the economic impact is usually within the top 5 as well, because once again, we are not limiting, but we obviously want, attendees that are going to be making purchases that are not just going there to see the stuff. So, if you look at the Consumer Electronics Show, you get a couple 100,000 people through Vegas because they're just there to look and see the new products. This is a trade show where we want to have our manufacturers, get good business, right? Write orders and sell product. And that's the whole goal of that, as opposed to just going and looking at new products.
So yeah, a lot of people though, when they think about National Shooting Sports Foundation, I think, as you said, the Firearms Trade Association, what they may not understand is how much you guys deal with. So your mission is to protect, promote, and preserve hunting and the shooting sports. And that goes far beyond just the manufacturing, but you guys deal a lot in the policy arena too. Is that correct?
We do. If you go essentially just to our website, nssf.org, you can go to the kind of the government relations section and see all the fact sheets and all the kind of the issues we go over, whether it's doing, like I said earlier, proactive stuff or defensive stuff. Obviously, some of the hot topics now that continue to, be on the front page of newspapers and in the media is 3D printed firearms. As well as what they're calling quote unquote smart guns. As we continue to see and go into an election year, we have many people, not really educated on the topic, but speaking of smart guns and 3D printing and various other, legislation that they want to see implemented, if they, get into office.
So we talk a lot in this podcast about policy that affects natural resources primarily. And one of the things that we have routinely hammered on is Pittman-Robertson. And I always tell people, members of NSSF, those companies are the people that are stroking that $1 billion a year check for conservation.
Yeah, it's great because, and we are trying as an industry and as a trade association to do more with that, to allow to get that out to the general public. It's not really hunters that are the conservationists, because if you look at the numbers, close to 80% of the Pittman-Robertson dollars and the dollars that are tax dollars that are going to conservation are coming from, basically target shooters, those that are going out to the range. I mean, it makes sense. Target shooters are going to spend a heck of a lot more money when it comes to ammunition. They're going to go and shoot, hundreds, if not thousands of rounds sometimes on trips to the ranges. So, the money that is going to conservation is coming from those target shooters, those who are, practicing for self-defense and protection and various other things. So, we always, talk about hunters as the, greatest conservationists. And while they are, we also need to be cognizant of the fact that a lot of that revenue, like I said, close to 80% of it is coming from even a different segment. A great example of this is earlier this year, I was invited to go on a bear den study in Connecticut. So we essentially go and they have bears and that have been tagged prior, and they go every spring to do obviously population count, check on the health, replace the collar on the bear and the cubs as well that were there. And it really was a great opportunity to see firsthand the money that goes through U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and then obviously gets distributed to the departments in the states and what those funds are being used for. And it really was a great experience. I know Smith & Wesson attended that bear den study and has put some stuff out on their social media. Thompson Center, obviously part of Smith & Wesson as well. And I believe Colt also went out there. So it's great to see firsthand that the dollars and what they're being used for and really being used for conservation. I don't think the general public knows that enough. If they did, I think they would have a little bit of an easier fight when it comes to some of this stuff that's trying to restrict our rights.
I'm actually surprised every day when it happens frequently when I have conversations with other hunters and passionate hunters, people that have been involved since they were very young, that have no idea that when they're purchasing ammunition or a firearm or archery equipment, that they're actually contributing to conservation, right? They don't know. And so, I mean, educating the public at large is a big thing, but we have some work to do even on educating the hunting population of the contributions that they make.
I agree 100%. I mean, I'm in some state capitals dealing with, let's say some sort of bill or legislation, maybe restricting hunting opportunities or access. And sometimes it's restricting access to game lands or to public lands that essentially have been purchased with our excise tax dollars. So, those people, I'm not saying that it's different, but those people who are going into those public lands to enjoy mountain biking and hiking and bird watching and all the various other things, they essentially have not put any money into that to pay for those lands. Yet they're still trying to restrict, our rights as hunters and sportsmen to enjoy those lands. So, people just need to realize that many of these lands across this country have been bought with dollars from the firearms industry, tax revenue from the firearms industry that gets distributed to the states. So, you may want to think twice before we start restricting access to our guys and, basically restricting sales of certain products, that the industry manufactures.
Well, and there are other restrictions that are out there too, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you here today to visit, because these hunting licenses, license sales and ammunition sales and firearm sales contribute to conservation. Having the opportunity to be able to be out there in the field hunting is a critical aspect of recruiting new hunters and getting them into the field. And we had an episode, episode 38, where we did an introduction to blue laws. And for those that are not familiar with blue laws, I know you're intimately familiar with them. You've been very involved with them. I'd like to have a discussion around those. Really, before we dive into that, though, I did have to put a plug in for one Michael McGrady, who has graciously joined the podcast.
Absolutely.
Nice time, Mike. It's nicer than mine today.
Yeah, right?
Yep.
Well, that's true every day.
Yeah, that's true.
Not every day.
Oh, you do wear ties now?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome. You missed a lot. Probably wouldn't have contributed much anyway.
That's probably true.
Jake's really carrying this one.
That's good. That's good.
And with that in mind, I do want to pivot back to you, Jake. And can you tell us a little bit about about blue laws, what they are, and we can talk about the history of them, and then kind of your role through NSSF in working through some of the issues surrounding them.
Yeah, so, when I speak to people outside of essentially kind of the mid-Atlantic or Northeast areas of the United States, people are like, what? Blue laws? What's that? What does that mean? So essentially, obviously, the Northeast was one of the first colonies and colonized, and what they put into place was obviously blue laws, which would be restrictions on activities that you could take part in on a Sunday. So, when I was younger, many of the retail stores weren't open on Sundays, or they were open for small, hours, maybe from like noon to 5. Obviously, as the years went on, those blue laws slowly disappeared, and then basically retail sales, closures on Sundays became a thing of the past. So as we continue to go on, a lot of the other blue laws started to fall, whether that was fishing, whether that was alcohol sales in the Northeast. They used to be restricted on Sundays. Most states now, I don't know offhand, but I think most of them allow Sunday sales of alcohol. And then even like car dealerships, auto sales. I know there's usually a fight over that in some states, and I think there's still a few that restrict that on Sundays as well. So, fast forward to now in Sunday hunting. It was a prohibition. It was a blue law that still stands, or still stands in a few states that has outright prohibitions. And NSSF has been working really for the past 8 to 10 years to try to overturn this. It was, my boss came to me and said, well, one of our goals should be trying to reverse some of these Sunday hunting, laws. I'm like, oh, yeah, you want me to overturn a 200-year-old law? Let me knock that out tomorrow. But it was, and I did look at it like that. And a lot of people, even in the industry, they, like you had mentioned, we know that by breaking down these barriers, giving people more opportunities, more access to hunt, that it will be helpful to the industry. It'll be helpful to hopefully keeping hunting license sales, at a decent level. So we took that on. We put a coalition together, and really the first state we started in was Virginia. And everyone in Virginia was like, "Oh, this is never going to happen. Never going to move this." It's so it was not. Once again, it wasn't a 1-year thing. It was probably 3 legislative sessions that it took to get that to move forward. And people, like I said, I've talked to other people in other parts of the country, and the arguments are just, they don't make any sense, right? The arguments are like, well, we don't want to restrict people's rights to go to church, or we don't want to have Sunday hunting because they won't attend church. Yet you look at some of the states with the highest church attendance, down south with Alabama and places like Louisiana and Mississippi, they've had Sunday hunting forever, and they seem to coexist quite well. So that was always one of the arguments, but we learned quickly in Virginia, and this is what worked, and we focus mainly on private property rights, right? Most guys, don't like being told what they can and cannot do on their land on Sundays. So let's assume out, in your neck of the woods, in the Montanas and Wyomings of the world, that they said, oh, you've got 500 acres, but you're not allowed to take your ATV out and go hunt on that. People would be up in arms. So a lot of our testing and focus group testing, and even a place like Virginia said, I think it was like 64% of the people said, no, you shouldn't be telling me what I can do. If I want to go, hunt deer on my 50-acre property here in Virginia, I should be allowed to do that. So that's really what got the ball moving, was the private land argument. Now, once again, as we just spoke about a couple minutes ago, the public lands are essentially all purchased with Pittman Robinson dollars and conservation dollars. But, there are more groups involved in using those public lands. They're always complaining that there'll be issues, even though hunting is one of the safest activities. They're saying, oh, people are going to get shot if they're walking in the woods on Sunday. And the easy comeback to that is, so you never walk in the woods Monday through Saturday at all, ever? So usually that takes their whole argument away. But, that's really where we started the whole battle, was in Virginia, and moved on from there.
What ended up happening in Virginia? So you said it took 3 sessions to get some resolution there, but what was the final resolution in Virginia?
So the final resolution there was, Sunday hunting is allowed on private lands. And what we did was, there were many people, including the Farm Bureau, that have been opposed. And I don't even know if we have enough time in this podcast to get into why the Farm Bureau would be opposed, because there really isn't any valid reason for it. But in that Sunday hunting bill in Virginia, what we did was increase the trespassing charges. Right. So if you're, on somebody's private farmland and you're trespassing, then obviously the charges would be greater. So that helped to kind of stem some of the opposition from the Farm Bureau in Virginia. So essentially the bill that passed obviously allows you to hunt on Sundays. We increased trespassing charges, and it's right now private land only. Obviously we want to go back in there and attack the public land issue, which we've had better success in their neighbors in West Virginia. I can go into that after, but the next step would be to go into Virginia and try to change that to public land only. Public land on top of the private land. So, but it was a good success, and really got the momentum moving, because everyone said it was impossible to do. You're not going to do it. You're not going to overturn a 200-year-old law. And we moved on from there and kind of moved our way up the coast, if you will, changing laws all around there.
Have you found any states where you had difficulty changing the law? I mean, none of these are easy. I should rephrase that. Because obviously these are all very, very difficult.
Challenging.
Yeah, there you go. I didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say it, but
I think that's only number 2 though. That's only the number 2 for challenging.
I got it as 3 because I'd interrupted him earlier, and then when he picked up where he left off, he said challenging again. So that's actually we're up to 3.
I'm gonna get a baker's dozen before we're done.
Listen, imagine if he had to work in the Northeast. Every other word would be challenging.
Yeah. Well, what's funny about this is that today, thinking about this particular episode, I was reminded of a time when I used to work with Nephi and would do little hash marks every time you would say a certain company's name. And it's been a long time since I heard you say that company's name.
Which company was that?
We'll never know.
Yeah.
Was it Magpul or Weatherby?
It was both.
Now we started. Well, he's already referenced Weatherby once on this, so you can start your tally if you want.
Yeah, right.
We only tease you because we love you, Nephi.
I don't know if everything there is true, but that's okay.
But anyway, getting back to the blue law issue and the Sunday hunting discussion. So, I mean, you worked your way up the coast. You said. Did you have any places where you were unable, or to this point have been unable, to change the laws where you've put some effort in and tried to do it?
Yeah. So what we do is we basically look at it from before session and look at it as reasonable whether we'll be able to get it done, whether we're going to not waste the time, but put the time, effort, and resources into a specific state. So in the Northeast, there are still 3 states that have complete prohibitions on Sunday hunting. Now there's, little outliers where there may be a predator. You may be able to shoot predators on Sundays but in the grand scheme of things, white-tailed deer and turkey, there are restrictions or full prohibitions both on public and private land. So those 3 states that are left in the Northeast are Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Maine. And so if you want to look at that, obviously the People's Republic of Massachusetts is one of the more difficult ones to try to get Sunday hunting done in. Because of the hunting numbers, the number of licensed hunters in the state, and then of course the opposition that would be to that, whether it's the hikers, bird watchers, others that don't want anything to do with it. They don't think hunting is, even a valid activity. So Massachusetts is kind of low on the list of priorities. Now, of those other 2 that are out there, Pennsylvania still has around 900,000 licensed hunters in the state. So we always look at Pennsylvania as, quote unquote, the holy grail if we were able to get some form of Sunday hunting through in Pennsylvania. And that has been some
perspective, really quick. Sorry to interrupt you, but for some perspective on that number, because you just threw out a gigantic number.
1 million people.
Almost 1 million people. I mean, the entire state of Wyoming, which is there's a very strong hunting culture in the state of Wyoming. And there are 550,000 total people here. Montana has just about 1 million people. Idaho has just about 1 million people. The Dakotas come in at under 1 million people, in each place. And you're talking about in one state, in Pennsylvania, having 900,000 licensed hunters. I just want to emphasize that's a large number of hunters, especially when nationally, and you probably know the information better than I do, but there, in the last U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service report on the number of hunters in the country, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of, is it 13 million?
Yeah, it was. It's in that range, and Pennsylvania has seen a precipitous drop, and that's, they were over 1 million hunters. I mean, it could be 800, 900,000 now, but they have seen that precipitous drop, and that's why we continue to try to push the Sunday hunting, because of the opportunities, right? I mean, you have individuals now who are working 2 jobs, families, mothers and father both work. They have 2 jobs and working 6 days a week. The kids have sports, activities, and, technically Sunday, may not even be a free day, but Sunday is the only day where you might be able to go out and hunt. So that is key to continuing to hopefully pass on hunting to other generations, and by getting that ability to do that, is key. I mean, Pennsylvania is a amazing state when it comes to hunting. I mean, their PR dollars, just obviously because PR dollars is usually calculated based on a land mass equation plus hunting license sales. So Pennsylvania does get a very good chunk of PR dollars into the state because of their number of license sales. And just so you know, they used to have the Monday after Thanksgiving is the opening of deer rifle season in Pennsylvania. And in many parts of the state, a majority of the state, Monday is like a state holiday. Like there's not even school. So, you know, they don't even have school because it's the opening day of deer season, rifle season. So it is still a very strong hunting culture. And that's why we feel that just being able to get them anything in the state on the Sunday hunting front would be a huge accomplishment for the sportsmen of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, I know, like my kids, if I've taken my sons out with me, and I like to take them at least on, 1 or 2 hunts a year, just put them in the truck and go. And I've got this year I'll have a kindergartner and a third grader. But once those kids get in school, so when am I going to take them? When are they going to get to go with me? Even if I'm taking some additional time, I'm going to go hunt these other days. It's the weekend. And if you lose one of those days, I mean, you basically lost 50% of your opportunities to introduce the next generation into hunting. And, and I think that's one of the challenges that we face as a hunting community. You look at where a community, people are talking about hunters aging out, right, of hunting. And so where are the new folks going to come from? They're 18 to 40-year-olds. They're that, they're demographic that, you want to get into hunting. Those folks are working 9 to 5s. Those people don't have the amount of time
or more. I mean, as was just mentioned, I mean, a lot of these people have 2 jobs. If 46% of Americans have a side hustle, which in other words is a second job or some other thing they're trying to do.
They're doing a podcast.
Yeah. So you got a lot of people that are taking up that time on the weekends also to do other things just to, keep going.
And
that's a great point about taking out half the weekend. Yeah.
And as Nephi stated, I mean, the economic impact or basically losing 50% of a weekend, right? So let's assume you're in a state nearby and you want to go, experience a deer hunt in Pennsylvania. You basically look at the weather forecast and it's going to rain on Saturday, and obviously you can't hunt on Sundays. So what are you going to do? You're going to pack up your car and you're going to go to West Virginia or Ohio, or even down to Virginia now, where you have that opportunity. And that's what we've tried to continue to try to instill in this argument, is that you're losing a ton of money. Not only are you losing your residents, but you're losing non-resident revenue that are just going to drive around the state or through it to a different destination because of your restriction on basically 50% of their hunting opportunities.
So I just real quick, you mentioned Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Maine as sort of being the 3 holdouts. Do you think that if one of those goes, the other 2 will? I mean, is there a leader there among those states?
I would say no. And let me preface that by saying, and at least give credit to a state that is very open to removing their antiquated blue law, and that was West Virginia. We started in West Virginia back in like 2010 during the election. They have 55 counties in West Virginia, and there was only about 18 of them that allowed Sunday hunting because it was a patchwork. Every county could decide their own thing. So NSSF made a vested interest in West Virginia to try to do these county initiatives, these small little county initiatives. I mean, we're talking some counties with a couple hundred people, and we lost one county by like 13 votes. But we ended up spending money and effort to get those counties up to almost like 50% of the state, right? There are 55 counties. So we're trying to get, somewhere in the 27, 28, 26, 27 of the counties to basically say, look, you got half the counties. Now let's go forward and try to remove the restrictions statewide. So in the 2016 election, there were 11 counties that had it on the ballot, and we went 11 for 11. Every single county approved Sunday hunting. So following that, in the 2017 legislative session, we went into the Capitol and said, listen, you're basically at 50%. Even some of the more populated counties, which you would think kind of more suburban counties, they even approve Sunday hunting. And we went in there. First year we came in, got private land with written permission for hunting, for Sunday hunting, passed it pretty easily. Well, I wouldn't say pretty easily, but once it got to the floor, the votes fell the way they fell, and it passed easily by a vote count. So then the following year, they came back, and even the department in West Virginia, Fish and Game Department, said, listen, we want public lands. There are many of our residents that don't have access to private lands, and we want to get public. So right after that, 2018, we came in, got public lands, so Sunday hunting. So basically in the course of 2 legislative sessions, we opened up the entire state of West Virginia for Sunday hunting. And, it's been a great, great thing for the sportsmen of West Virginia. So go back to your question. If one of these fall, do the rest of them fall? I would say no. They're all kind of individual entities, and they all have their own weird intricacies and issues that we're dealing with that are different from another state. We have Pennsylvania essentially is now surrounded by every state that allows Sunday hunting. So they're essentially their own little island there that's not allowing it. But we've done testing, a focus group testing in Pennsylvania, and we have actual individuals that possess a hunting license tell us, oh, I don't really want Sunday hunting in the state because then I'll feel like I have to go out and hunt. Really? Like they don't want to have the choice.
I want that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you would think. That's what you would think. But they're like, if it's prohibited on Sunday, then I don't feel I have to go. So I can't go, so I don't have to go. But don't give me the choice because then I'll have to go. It's just
you have people that feel like they'd be guilted into hunting. Like the pressure would mount that they just I don't want to go, but it's open, so I better be out there.
It's crazy.
I need to meet these people. I didn't know people like this existed.
Listen,
other people.
Listen, we did a focus group, and the one I'm looking around the table of this focus group, and you can tell people what they're wearing and all this. There was a female organic farmer, obviously tended to be liberal in her views, that was the biggest supporter of Sunday hunting you could find. Huge supporter. I'm talking, and then you had guys who are like, oh, I just don't want to have to go out and hunt. This woman was like, listen, the deer are destroying my crops. They're in there all the time. I can't control them. I want Sunday hunting. Let's pass it. And then you got the guy.
This guy feels like it's a job.
Yeah.
Organic lead.
He's looking like it's his job. Like, oh, I don't want to have to go on Sunday. This woman's trying to make a living and actually wants to control the deer population. And the only one you wouldn't expect to be on our side was on our side in that room.
Yeah, that's surprising.
So that tees this next piece up perfectly, because I'm sitting here thinking 900,000 hunters in Pennsylvania. You've got to have some overwhelming political will to be able to get this done. And then I hear stories like this that are, by the way, baffling to me, because if a season is open, I don't feel pressured into hunting.
Dave's trying to figure out how to get more time off work.
I feel pressured on the family side to maybe not be out quite as much.
Yes.
But I certainly all I look at it is opportunity. So that all baffles me. But apparently it's there. But there is some movement starting to happen in Pennsylvania. And I kind of wanted to talk about, because earlier this week, we all noticed here, and this is one of the reasons we wanted to have you on here.
We had an email.
We got an email from somebody.
Guy in Pennsylvania is so excited. He's like, we're going to get it.
Yeah. He said, look what just happened. A bill just passed out of the Senate Appropriations Committee to allow some limited Sunday hunting. Mm-hmm. Or if it were ultimately to pass. And the description that he was providing was that this is pretty monumental, that they haven't had a bill get out of committee that would allow Sunday hunting. And so this is a big deal. And I wanted to ask you about it and
so what's
get
good?
your perspective.
Yeah, what's good? What's bad? What's the reality check?
Yep.
Where have we gotten to? Where can we go?
So Pennsylvania, as I've already kind of laid out, is a little different when it comes to, and even in the legislature, it's very different. So that bill that's being referenced is Senate Bill 147. It's sponsored by an individual, a state senator by the name of Dan Laughlin. Very good guy, very strong supporter of Sunday hunting. And it actually, we were able to get it moved out of the Environment Committee. Really, the first time it had been moved out of a committee ever. I mean, and we, as NSSF, we did take a vested interest in Pennsylvania. We looked at Pennsylvania as our number one priority, focused our resources, focused our time and effort in there. We've done some campaigns, some kind of grassroots campaigns, working with a lot of the in-state groups there, Hunters United for Sunday Hunting and NRA, and everyone's kind of, trying to move the needle on this bill. So the referenced vote from earlier this week the bill came out of the Environment Committee, pretty strong vote, and then was parked in the Appropriations Committee because the bill in its original text, which it still is in right now, essentially said we will give the Pennsylvania Game Commission full authority to regulate Sunday hunting, which we and many others support because obviously the Game Commission they're the authorities, they're the biologists, they're the ones that should be setting the season and bag limits for much of this. So we felt that just remove the prohibition, give the commission the authority to implement it, whether, if the commission came out and said, you know what, we're only going to implement a Sunday for spring turkey. That's their prerogative. They're the professionals. They're the biologists. Let them do that. So that was our goal with the bill, and that is the bill currently as it sits. Unfortunately, in Pennsylvania, the Farm Bureau is very, very strong. They have basically drawn a line in the sand for the past however long I can remember doing it, 12 years since I've been doing
200
it. 200
years?
Yeah, well, yeah, 200, exactly. Give or take. Give or take. I can't remember that far back. But they have been really an obstructionist in this, and they are still being an obstructionist in this bill. We did the same thing we did in Virginia, trying to increase trespassing to appease the Farm Bureau, because obviously they're always complaining, there are people on our property that don't have permission to be on our property. Fine, we'll increase trespassing charges, and we can enforce that. But the understanding, I think, is that they're going to limit the number of Sundays. We have not seen the text. Allegedly, this bill is going to be amended on the Senate floor before it goes for a vote next week. I'm hearing it could be as early as Tuesday, but I also was told it was going to be voted on the floor this past Wednesday or Thursday. So, needless to say, that didn't happen.
So by just context, that's the last week of June.
Yes,
you're talking about is potentially up in front of the committee.
Just so you know, Pennsylvania is a full-time legislature. So they go year round. So the Senate will take their summer break next week, and then come back in the fall. But obviously, where we would want to be is to get that bill out of the Senate over to the House. And then it would be great because we could have a bill in the House during hunting season, or maybe in the fall prior to hunting season, and maybe get it passed and get a little bit of a, grassroots push behind it, given the timing of it. But it's, we haven't seen text of what they want to amend it to. I keep hearing that they want to limit it to as low as 3 or 4 Sundays, which again, I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think the legislature should be setting the times, but they are trying to balance between, trying to appease the Farm Bureau and appease sportsmen, and it's.
How about just during hunting season?
Yeah,
bad.
Well,
only the Sundays in hunting season.
But
yeah.
That
makes too much sense.
It's interesting in Pennsylvania is because a lot of the sportsmen in Pennsylvania don't necessarily trust or believe in the ability of the Pennsylvania Game Commission. So they don't really want to give them that type of authority. And, we've seen in the past that they're not happy with it. They say, well, we don't see any deer in the woods. They're not managing the population effectively. And, in the past, it's always been an argument. They're saying, well, we don't want, the opponents are always saying, we don't want 52 Sundays. Well, as the 4 of us know, we're not dealing with 52 Sundays because there's not 52 Sundays in the hunting season.
I'm trying to figure that out. By the way, I'm trying to remedy that. I think I found a path forward.
I told Dave. I wrote down on his piece on his pad here. So Dave, I was like, hunting is Dave's religion. So it seems like you're taking away someone's religious liberty, not letting Dave hunt on Sundays.
I'm about to make a constitutional argument.
I thought Dave was getting a little concerned with the math involved with 52 Sundays, but yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't.
No, I am. It should be 52 Sundays is my point. I'm concerned with math that's less than that. I'm trying to figure out how we can have coverage to have some kind of hunting open 52 weeks a year. And I think I've figured it out, but I'm not going to give that away just yet. But I do think I've figured it out.
But that's what they turned it into. They turned it into an argument. It's always 52 Sundays, and we see no deer, and you're decimating the deer population. So that's what we try to move it away from. We're not talking about deer. We're not talking about every Sunday. Give the Game Commission the authority to do it, and which would work out well, I believe, for both sportsmen. I think they would it would be a good balance, whether they do it for spring turkey and fall deer. I mean, do it, and figure it out that way. And, at the end of the day, you're probably only dealing with 12 Sundays at the most. But now we're in a situation where it's going to be
Dave's shaking his head. He's shaking his head. He's disappointed.
He's still not
12
happy.
Sundays.
No,
12 Sunday. We have.
Dave's like, I want 53 weeks.
I don't even know. I don't even know how to respond to that. But yeah, if we could make it 53 weeks, that'd be great. But I did want to circle back really quickly because you had mentioned, and I want to make sure we get it cleared up because I'd read a couple of newspaper articles on this, and they seemed pretty definitive in their reporting on that the amended bill would lift the ban for 3 Sundays a year. And you had touched on you hadn't seen the language and you'd heard rumors about maybe 3. Is that kind of the sense you're getting that that's the direction it's going to go? Is very restricted to just a handful of Sundays?
Yes. At this point in time, I think it's going to be that 3 number. The Farm Bureau, as recently as this past year, said, "Oh, we'll accept 3 Sundays." They saw the writing on the wall and that there was some movement. So instead of being complete obstructionists, they're saying, "Well, now we'll accept 3." So as in many legislatures, what they're going to try to do is appease everyone or think they're appeasing everyone. Well, okay, we'll give the sportsmen their 3 Sundays. The Farm Bureau said they'll like 3. So that's where where it'll end up. We'll increase the trespassing charges and everyone will be happy. In all honesty, NSSF is not really that happy with this situation because I think giving, once again, the professionals the authority should be what you should be doing, not now. Basically, we'll have to go back to the legislature to make any changes. And it's been 200 years since we did it. And now was it going to be another 200 years before we can get another Sunday? We've had this issue in many other states where they say, I'll give you a perfect example. Connecticut. They had an old blue law. They were able, Sunday hunting passed, but it was for archery only. Well, as a trade association for the firearms industry, I know pretty damn well that the Connecticut legislature is not going to come back and give us the authority to hunt with firearms in Connecticut. So that bill, when it was archery only, well, I think it's obviously good for sportsmen that go out and archers.
It's good for sportsmen who like to hunt stuff with a bow,
but not anyone with firearms. So essentially, they're never going to come back and fix that. That Connecticut will be labeled as Sunday hunting allowed for archery only. And actually in Connecticut, it's archery only, private land with written permission. And in a squirrel on the full moon or something like that. I mean, it's pretty restrictive.
So let me get a little politically wonky just for a second, and then I know we've taken up quite a bit of your time here. But as far as the next steps, I mean, so I'm hearing 3's not enough. I agree with you. For example, I've had an elk tag in the past here in Wyoming where the season is open for 22 Sundays for elk. 3 just wouldn't. I mean, I'd go crazy. I don't know what.
So would your wife.
With 3?
Yeah, if you have you around. She doesn't want you
get out of the house. Yeah, find something else to hunt. But is there a way to address? So if you're to move this bill in amended form through the Senate and get it passed there, obviously you still have to go through the House. Would you be looking at, and maybe you don't want to speak to this, I don't know, but would you be looking at a House bill, or would there be an opportunity to run a House bill that might not be as restrictive, and then have a chance through conference to resolve some of those issues and get a little bit more
companion bill? It's more favorable.
A more favorable companion bill.
I think my fear is that these 3 Sundays that they continue to point to that may not have been fully negotiated on the House side, and it could end up being worse. Or, I don't think the appetite is there on the House side to move a bill that would be less restrictive than the 3 Sundays. So my fear is now that, it could even get watered down. I mean, I had some discussions with people. I said, we're essentially negotiating against ourselves, right? The Farm Bureau didn't come to the table to negotiate any of this bill. They basically said, this is all we'll accept. And, we had a bill that was going to open the door to and give the commission full authority. And now we go from basically full authority to a limit of 3, which in my opinion is not the best move. Now, obviously, we've done stuff where it's incremental in other states, like in West Virginia, where we did county and did, and moved it along. So, this is private and public lands, 3 Sundays, and, maybe this fall hunting season they can get it and it goes great, and maybe we do go back for that. I just don't like having the legislature given that authority to limit and deal with season and bag limits and all that sort of stuff when they're not the professionals. So that's kind of a long answer to your question, but I'm not entirely sure. I want to get the 3 Sunday bill at least out of the Senate and then see where we're at. I mean, I don't know. It's a kind of, like I said, it's a moving target. It's changed a few times, and we're kind of where we're at now, where I would thought there was going to be a Senate vote on Wednesday, and now we're on Friday and we don't have a vote. So,
so it begs a question for me. I know we actually, even though we're based out here, I know we have a lot of people from Pennsylvania that actually listen to this podcast, in part because of some of the an earlier episode we've done on Sunday hunting and talking about Pennsylvania. And so for our listeners that are hunters in Pennsylvania that are following this and that are interested in, okay, what can we do? What kind of a message would you have for them at this point, to get involved or to help this process?
I would essentially continue to tell people to contact their state senators, ask them to vote on a Sunday hunting bill. What form that ends up in, we've asked for the amended language that they're going to put as an amendment on the floor, and we still don't have it. It still hasn't been given to us. It's still, quote unquote, being drafted. So that never gives anyone a warm, fuzzy feeling, especially you guys know when you're dealing with legislatures and the process and really what happens in the state capitals. But I would say any of your listeners and that are supportive, call your state senator directly, write him or her a personal email saying, listen, we need increased hunting opportunities. If that entails Sunday hunting, great, but we need the opportunity to get out into the field more and support this Sunday hunting bill and move this thing forward, whatever form that ends up being. If it ends up 3 Sundays, am I going to jump up and down and say it was great when I knew what we could have gotten? I mean, I'll celebrate it as a victory, but I'm not entirely happy. So I think anything that the sportsmen of Pennsylvania can get right now would be great, because once again, we're dealing with something that's 200 years old. It's an antiquated blue law, and this is the only movement in the 12 years that I've been with NSSF that we've seen. We could never even get it out of a committee. We couldn't even get it called for a committee vote in the past. So I think, the hunters and sportsmen of Pennsylvania need to realize that there is progress. they feel the pressure and to continue to apply that pressure to their state senator.
Yeah, don't give up. Like for whatever
Correct.
you do, it's like now is not the time to be silent.
No, and even in my position, while I'm not happy with the current situation, getting something in Pennsylvania is a victory. I think there still could have been more, but let's continue to talk to your state senators, and don't forget, once it gets out of the Senate, you're going to have to reach out and talk to your House members and reps there as well, to make sure that we keep that momentum moving forward when it does go over to the House after their break.
Well, so that's great. That's really helpful. And I know that the listeners appreciate knowing how to get involved the right way to be able to be impactful. I know we're going to keep following this. We're going to keep updating as we can. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here to talk to us about NSSF generally, blue laws generally, and Pennsylvania specifically. I know Nephi had something else he wanted to throw out at you before we wrap up.
No, I just think it's neat. I don't think people, when you think about the firearms industry, and that, we just talked for a lot of time, a lot of time about something that people might not have considered that, quote unquote, the arms manufacturing industry would be involved in. But you guys are all over this stuff all the time, whether it's, federal level, opening up, and preserving access to public lands federally, whether it's blue laws, access, ammunition issues at the state level. I'm happy that the industry is working in those areas.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing. Just sitting here thinking, wow, that's amazing that an industry association really into manufacturing would go after something that is not directly related to them, and it's not their bottom line.
Yeah.
It's not an issue about whether you can manufacture a gun a certain way. It's about the end user enjoyment.
It's about the opportunity, about creating opportunities for the future. Again, protect, promote, preserve. And so I appreciate that you guys are doing it.
Yeah, we could spend another hour talking about changing demographics and basically different markets. But I think like you said, giving people that opportunity is what the industry wants. We want to promote the industry. We want to promote target shooting. We want to promote hunting. We want to promote the Second Amendment. And the best way to do that is to defend people's rights, but at the same time be proactive and do stuff in states like Pennsylvania to get them, those opportunities as well. So we'll continue to do that, and we'll continue to, represent our manufacturers, our independent retailers, and everyone else out there across America.
Well, Jake, thanks for all you're doing. Thanks for all NSSF is doing. Thanks for taking the time with us. I do have to make one final note. My final tally on Nephi's challenging issues for the day was only 4.
Wow.
And this is one of the most challenging issues that you're probably dealing with. I'm seeing, maybe not, but
I would have said it a lot more, but now I have a complex.
I know. I was calling him out on it.
Calling him out.
Really
reduced it.
I wanted to talk more during this podcast. In fact, I wanted to interrupt you about 50 times. But then I couldn't because I knew I'd say challenging. So I did.
Listen,
5.
Perfect. If Nephi had to deal with these challenging issues out here in Pennsylvania in the Northeast, he'd be mainlining Monster. He wouldn't just be drinking it. So he'd be going through cases of that
stuff. I think you're probably right.
And with that,
he's
one more swig.
One more swig. And I'm going to end it with...
So refreshing.
I'm going to end it with thanks, everybody, again for listening. If you liked what you heard, you want to hear more of it, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating, leave a comment on iTunes, find us on social media with the handle of @itsyourmountain. Send us an email, yourmountain@itsyourmountain.com. And as always, remember that life is about experiences, so go have one.